Appreciate being on the call this morning, and as usual, this is a good time if you got questions, concerns, things going well, things going poorly. Please, this is a great time to talk about them because everybody will benefit from your comments, questions, and if things have gone well or if things have gone poorly. We can all benefit from what we discover from those things. So if you've got those questions, concerns, please either raise your hand and we'll open up your mic, or you can type them in and Missy will let me know as they come in. So we're going to be listening later on here to a tape of the last 10 minutes of the first meeting, so you can get an idea what you should look for, what to expect, the things that you can do to improve that for yourselves, and why that's so important. So before that, though, as Missy's waiting to see if there's any questions, etc., I'll go through our pointer for today, and we'll see if that generates some questions as well. So I want to talk about Paul Samuelson. So I don't know if any of you have heard of Paul Samuelson before, but he is one of the foremost economists of the last 100 years, and I'll explain some of his background here. He was a colleague of Milton Friedman. I'm sure all of you have heard of Milton Friedman being financial advisors. He won the inaugural John Bates Clark Award, which is the premier award for economic study, so he was the first one ever to be given that award. He won a Nobel Prize for Economics for things that he did back in 1952 and early 60s. And then actually Merton and Scholes. How many of you know who Merton and Scholes are? Anybody know who Merton and Scholes are? Can I see a raise of hands? I can't see those. You have to see if we have any hands raised.
Got a couple hands coming up and a bunch of yeses.
Good. Okay, good. Because Merton and Scholes won the Nobel Prize. Why they are so important is it's a great lesson that I teach people continually in this business who think that they have the best money management system because it hasn't lost money ever, and the guy who's running it is really smart, and blah, 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 blah. Merton and Scholes won a Nobel Prize, and they created a money management system and back-tested it for 100 years. And when they started it, it was called long-term capital. It was called long-term capital. If you research this, you'll see what I'm talking about. They built a company that, based on their Nobel Prize and all of the information that they'd put together and the research they put together, and the minimum investment size back in the late 1960s, early 1970s was $10 million. That was the minimum account size, and it grew within 1 year. The minimum account size was $1 billion. Basically, every pension, even countries were investing in this fund because, geez, it was run by 2 Nobel Prize-winning economists and had been back-tested forever, and these guys made tons of money the first year. They made tons of money the second year. They made tons of money the third year, and then let's see some ideas. Anybody have an idea what happened the fourth year? What happened the fourth year? Who knows what happened to long-term capital management?
Got bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy, and it almost bankrupted the world. It was the first time that all of the G7 had to step in. Germany, England, the United States, Japan all stepped in and bailed these guys out. They were the first big bank bailout. Because if they didn't do that, there are so many municipalities, countries, pension funds that the world would have went bankrupt with them if they didn't step in. But that's who Merton and Scholes is. That they're a lesson in what you should not do. Just because you're a theorist doesn't mean that it's going to work going forward. But basically, Paul Samuelson, if they would have listened to Paul Samuelson, it would have been far better. They took some of his research and then created their own research on top of that. And I'll show you what Paul Samuelson, if they would have listened to him a little bit better, they would have been much better off. But anyways, Paul Samuelson, back to him, many people think should have been the only economist ever to have won 2 Nobel Prizes. So, I mean, this guy was incredibly smart, and if you were an economist, he is considered the premier economist in the last 100 years. So what he did is he looked from a purely mathematical point of view. He said stocks are not safer over long periods of time. What have we been told forever and ever and ever? That if you hold on, what? If you hold on, things are going to get what? Better. Stocks are safe if you hold them for long periods of time. All of his math proves that stocks are not safer over long periods of time. Historically, there is a 35% chance that a diversified stock portfolio will underperform a safe portfolio in any particular year. That's a 1 out of 3 chance that you'd be better off in safe than in growth. And here's the thing. The stock market's behavior from year to year exhibits the same independence as consecutive coin tosses. This ties right into our Take Your Brain for a Jog event. His math proves that the coin has no memory of past behavior, and more importantly, neither does the stock market have any memory of what happened last year. And that's really the point of the Take Your Brain for a Jog event, which is what? Just because something did something last year, does that have any bearing on what's going to do this year? Just because something did something last week, does that have any bearing on what it's going to do this week? Just because something did something yesterday, does that have any bearing on what's going to happen today? What happens today is totally independent from what happened yesterday, last week, last month, last year, last decade. And in fact, anything can happen going forward. So when people are retired, do they like, how many of your retired clients like the idea that anything can happen tomorrow to their money? If they're in the stock market, guess what they have to be clear, what has to be clear in their mind? Anything could happen to their money tomorrow. See, his formula indicated that at retirement, stocks are too risky for any but a very few people. Anybody have an idea what the very few people he thought stocks are okay for? Who do you think he thought stocks are okay for? Let's see some answers. Can you holler them out at me, Miss, when you get?
Yep.
Who do you think that he thought stocks were okay for? And really, Benjamin Graham said the same thing. Come on, guys. Who do you think stocks are okay for, according to this guy? Nothing, Missy?
Large. Got one that says large pensions. Those who can lose.
Aha. Those that can lose. And his point was only the ultra wealthy. But here's the thing, guys. You should. I hope you've seen this. Where do most of the ultra wealthy have their money? Do most of the ultra wealthy have their money in stocks? Now, I'm not talking about the Waltons who will have a bunch of Walmart stock. There are lots of wealthy people, the DuPonts or whatever, that have money in their own company stock. But how many wealthy people go out and buy other stocks? Lots or not very many?
None.
None, exactly. Wealthy people put their money in guaranteed things. They're not going to take risks on the stock market. I mean, if they own a company, obviously they're going to have money in that stock. But other than that, they don't go looking for additional stocks to buy because they realize the wealthy are smart. They realize the risks in stocks. They're not going to lose all of that based on the stock market. So now, does that mean that I think that everybody should have all their money in guaranteed? No, but I tell you what, Paul Samuelson's a hell of a lot smarter than me or really anybody walking around selling or hawking stocks or mutual funds or anything else nowadays. So if he says that retirement stocks are too risky for anybody, a few people, that's certainly something I've got to take into account when I'm working with retired folks. Would you agree or not agree on that? And this was the source of this is How Much in Risky Stock versus Safe Cash by Moshe Milevsky. And those of you who again are doing the reading, you should if you're offering money to stocks to people. Should know who Milevsky is. I mean, he's one of the most respected economists that's alive today. So my point here, guys, is first of all, our coin toss exercise in the event is valid, and you should make sure that the people get the point of that when you're doing the coin toss. Is that the point of that is not that you can throw 5 heads in a row or 15 heads in a row. The point is, whatever you throw the next time has nothing to do with what happened in the past. It's the same thing with their portfolio. Whatever happened in the past has nothing to do with what's going to happen this year to their portfolio. So they have to be prepared for what? Anything. They have to be prepared for the what-ifs. And that's the point of that part of the event. So, Missy, do we have any questions or concerns come up while I was going through our pointer?
Nope. No questions
Excellent.
or concerns.
Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is a tape review of a gentleman, and we're going to deal with the last part of the meeting, the last 10 minutes of the first meeting. Now, can I get some answers, guys? When is the actual close? In our process, when is the close? Is it at the event? Is it at the first meeting? Is it at the second meeting? Is it at the third meeting? When do you think our close is? When is the real close? So tell me when we get some answers there, Missy.
First.
When? First
second,
meeting, okay.
At the end of the first. First and second.
At the end of the first. Excellent. Well, it's the end of the first meeting is when we actually get our close, our real close. And really, if you think about it, that's the best time to get our close. Because is the close stressful, guys? The close is extremely stressful. It's stressful for them. It's stressful for us. So the advantage of having the close at the first meeting is that how much do we have on the line at the end of the first meeting? Have we done any work for them? Have we done any research for them? Have we done any analysis for them at the end of the first meeting? So how much do we really have on the line at the end of that first meeting? We just have an hour invested, that's it. But no real work, do we? And how much did they have vested at the first meeting? I mean, are they going to move? Are we asking them to move all their money at the first meeting? Are we asking them to sign on the dotted line? So do they have anything really invested at the first meeting? So this is the perfect time. They don't, do they? So this is the perfect time to close because they have nothing or very little invested and we have very little invested. So we can both make our decision based on reality without emotions getting involved. Does that make sense to everybody? So Jeff, why do we consider the end of the first meeting the real close to the process?
Well, that's when they're telling you, yes, I could work with you even if it means leaving a current advisor if you do what you say you can do.
And I think you said it perfectly. That's when they say they could leave their current advisor. Is the close when they say, hey, I like that investment you're showing me? Why is that not the close?
Well, because they can get that investment anywhere else.
Yeah, they can get that investment anywhere. So that is not the close. The close is when they say, I will leave my guy if I think my guy is not doing his job. That's the true close. Do you guys get that? And if all I offer at the end of the first meeting is a free second opinion, a free analysis, a look-see at their current investments, is that a close? No, that's a free offer. So if they leave that first meeting thinking they're just getting something for free, guess what? All the pressure is still coming down the line, and that pressure goes up and up and up as you do more and more work and as they have more and more pressure to sign on the dotted line. So this is the appropriate time to get them to admit that they'll leave their guy, okay? So that's why we consider the end of the first meeting, so as you said that, congrats, the end of the first meeting as the close. See, a study conducted by Dr. I don't know how you pronounce that, Bleslato of the University of Chicago was done where he split people up into 3 groups and tested each group on how many free throws they could make. After this, he had the first group practice free throws every day for an hour. The second group visualized in their head making free throws for an hour, and the third group did nothing. And guess what they found after 30 days? He tested them again. What do they think they found? So, Missy, tell me what you see when, with some of these answers. Are we getting any answers? You're waiting.
I'm waiting.
Guys, what do you think?
The first 2 were the same. Practice made it better.
Yeah,
second and first within 5%.
Yep.
First group did the best. Second group did better.
First group improved by 24%. The second group, who just visualized, didn't even pick up a basketball, improved by 23%, which is statistically irrelevant. So they both improved by the same amount, and you're right, the third group did not see any improvement at all. So what does that say? Why do you think I show you this study? Because at the end of the first meeting, if I say, hey, do you want me to do a free analysis, a free second opinion, etc., what have they visualized in their heads? Getting a free second opinion, getting some free answers that they can take back to their guy. That's exactly what they're not visualizing taking information that you give them and doing it with you. They're visualizing taking it back to their guy. Is that what you want them visualizing? And Jeff, how many times have we heard people's guys say, well, no, that's not the case. I mean, they wouldn't be in my office if they weren't there for my help. And if I can, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Yeah, and that if I show them this stuff and it's better than what they're doing, they're obviously going to do what?
Well, they're going to move over to you.
And does that ever happen? In the 10 years we've been coaching guys, no. And in the 25 years I've been in this business, I've never seen it for me. In 10 years coaching guys, we've never seen it. These people only visualize taking your information back to their current guy. Instead, I want them visualizing what? Leaving their guy. That's why we have the unconditional love versus loyalty scripts. They visualize leaving their guy. That's why we have the unfair versus fair. They visualize leaving their guy. And that's why we have the little secret close so they can actually, we hit them in the face. Did you visualize this or did you not visualize this before they leave? Because if they visualized it, then they can happen. If they haven't if they visualize it, it makes them sick to their stomach, then it cannot happen. So when we look at the true close, the last 10 minutes of the first meeting, the close is 3 mini scripts. It's the loyalty versus unconditional love, the fair versus unfair, and the little secret close. Those are that is the close, not because really it's all done and said and done. If I do this and they do a good job of this and they admit that, if at the second meeting they hate their guy, it's Jeff, you've seen this at the third meeting. If they've done a good close at the first meeting and they leave that second meeting hating their guy, do you even consider the third meeting a close?
No, it's very easy. It's very.
Just
think of it this way: whether they change investments or not, they're going to change guys.
Mm-hmm.
So there's very little stress. There's nothing for you to worry about. There's nothing for them to worry about. The decision's already made.
So the close is not the third meeting. Basically, it's just wrapping things up at the third meeting. So let's look at these three. Before we get into the tape, I want you to review, I want to review with you all what we're trying to do with these things before we listen to the tape. So loyalty versus unconditional love is about loyalty being what? Two-way. So the first step in the loyalty versus unconditional love script is loyalty is good. Hey, and the fact that you have a guy that you're loyal to, that's fantastic. That says a lot about you. That's terrific because I like to work with loyal people. I think that's what makes the world in the United States such a great place to live is people are loyal to each other. So I think it's fantastic that you're loyal to your guy. So Jeff, am I shooting myself in the foot when I'm congratulating them on being loyal to their guy?
No, not at all.
No, because that's a good thing. Because do we want to work with loyal people or unloyal people?
Loyal people.
Loyal people. But then we're going to say, but loyalty is what? One way or two way? Two way. And then we start to give them examples of where it's two way. So we talk about doctors saying, hey, you should be loyal to your doctor if you've gone to him forever and he's delivered your babies and he's been with your family forever and taken care of you. You should be loyal to him. Anybody who wasn't loyal to a doctor at that point would be a bad person. And we admit that. But then we also go through the explanations of what if we find out the doctor is not loyal to us? He's prescribing medication that he owns sole ownership of stock in, and we find out we don't even need the medication. I mean, what if we find out he's not loyal to us? Then we're what? Then we'll leave the doctor. So it works that way. So loyalty is two-way for our relationships with doctors. Well, how about with our friends? We go through the same thing with our friends. So are we loyal to our friends no matter how much they take advantage of us and screw us over and everything else? No. We're loyal to our friends because they're what? Loyal to us. Even when we get to the point of our marriages in the United States. Are we loyal to our spouse regardless of what they do to us? No, we're only loyal to our spouse as long as they're what? Loyal to us. There's only one relationship we have where we have unconditional love, and that's what? With our children. So do you unconditionally love your broker? I don't know why I'm missing a word there, though. Do you unconditionally love your broker? And what do they say at that point? No. I mean, I don't unconditionally. I mean, if he's not doing his job, they start to visualize what? And explain to you out loud what? I'm loyal to my guy, but I do not unconditionally love him. In fact, here's all the reasons I'd leave him. If he's not doing his job, they start to explain to you why they'll leave their guy. So now what's happened in their little TV set in their brain? They've actually seen leaving their current guy. So now that's the second part, fair versus unfair. Okay, so fair versus unfair, after they've told us, no, I don't unconditionally love my guy, we're going to say, great. I mean, that totally makes sense. So and then we're going to clarify that, hey, have we looked at their situation yet? No. Have we looked at any, done an analysis on what they're doing? No. Have we done any research? No. So we're going to say, hey, we don't know if the guy's done anything wrong. For all we know, he's doing a fantastic job. But I guess the question I have for you, though, if we find out he's not doing a fantastic job, we find out there's not little things wrong, but big things wrong, would it be fair to take my information back to that guy? And they always say, well, no, it wouldn't be fair. And I say, well, who would it be unfair to? And they immediately jump and think I'm fishing for myself. They say, would it be unfair to you, Mike? I say, oh, you know what, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. I guess it would be unfair to me, but I guess I'm not worried about that because really, folks, is it your responsibility to take care of me and my family? And what do they say? No, and I say, right, who's your responsibility to? Well, us and our family. I say, well, so I appreciate you saying it'd be unfair to me. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, but really, the moment you walk through that doorway out of my office, how much of my concerns are your concerns? Well, not very much. So you need to figure out, would it be unfair to who? Yourself. And who are you supposed to look after? Ourselves. That's who we're supposed to look after. So let's say, and again, I always clarify, we haven't seen anything wrong, so everything might be great, but if we find significant things, not little things, but big things wrong, and you take it back to that guy, then here's the thing. You get those things fixed, right? But do things change? So we go through this whole thing. Do things change? Does interest rates change? The economy change? The stock market change? Do tax law change? Everything what changes? And does it change faster or is it less often as it used to? More often. And then we go through, well, what will you be thinking then? Because remember, things were all out of whack. We don't know for sure, but if things were all out of whack and you took it back to him and then things changed, you start to wonder what? Well, geez, he hasn't called me and he did all those things wrong before. I wonder if he's what? Well, I wonder if he's keeping track of these things or if we're getting all out of whack again, right? So you're going to do what then? If you're just to make sure, not to be mean or anything, you're just to make sure, because you've already found out one time when he had all these things out of whack. You're going to just call to make sure what? Things are still that he's on top of it and he's making the changes he needs to, right? What do you think your advisor's reaction to that's going to be? Going to be happy that you're double checking on him? Happy that you're checking up on him? Or is it going to be a little be what? Well, defensive. Yeah, and then you're going to be what? Well, why are you getting so defensive? I'm just checking on you because I caught you doing a bunch of things wrong before, so you shouldn't be getting defensive. You should be happy. So don't be pulling that defensive stuff with me, and then how's he going to view that? Going to be happy that you get a little irritated with him back, and then you get a little bit what? And then this is a death spiral into what? What's going to happen to your relationship? And is that fair? Is that fair to you? When you gave him a second chance, but then he's getting irritated with you just making sure that he's doing his job the second time. Again, because he has a track record of what? Doing things or forgetting things. So is it fair for him to get angry at you, irritated with you? No, it's not fair. And really, if you think about it, is it fair to him? Does he want a relationship like that with a client? Well, no, it's not fair. And you said earlier, is it even fair to me? Well, no, you're right. It's not fair to you. So it's not fair to him. It's not fair to me. But who are you really concerned with? Well, ourselves. And is it unfair to you? No, it is unfair to us. And then I always ask what? An essay question so they can clarify in their mind, well, why would it be unfair to you? So they can then say out loud why. Well, whatever they want to say, make sure it makes sense and let them clarify to themselves that, yes, it would be unfair to take our information back to that guy. And then, so now they've told us they don't unconditionally love their guy. They'd leave him if he wasn't doing his job, and it'd be unfair not to leave him. Then we do the little secret close, and we basically say, see those pictures around the office? That's where I want to spend all my time. Whether you have family, that's where you're going to put all over. I want to spend all my time with my family. If it's you don't have family, you like to fish, well, then you can say I like to fish or whatever. Whatever your main thing that you like to do, that's what you're going to have pictures all over. And then you can say, so here's the reason I bring up those pictures, folks. I don't need any more practice. I've been doing this for years and years and years. I see people just like yourself a dozen times a week, so I don't need any more practice to do this. If I can do it, I'm going to move people forward. If I can't do it, I'm not going to take another meeting because it'd be a waste of your time, a waste of my time because I don't need any practice. So based on what you said, which is what? You don't unconditionally love your guy. But based on the fact that you think it'd be unfair to take myself back to your guy, here's the little secret. The secret is you're going to become a client of mine. And then what do I do, guys? Let's see if you can get the answer. After I say, you're going to become a client of mine, what do I do? Missy, tell me when you get some people answering this.
Okay.
What do I do after I say in a little secret?
Shut up.
Shut up. Yes, shut up. Because then he who speaks first, what? Loses. And the record I ever heard was 40 seconds. And it was, man, that 40 seconds seemed like, in a tape review, I was listening with a guy, and I said, is the tape still on? He goes, yeah, listen. And we timed it 40 seconds. I said, whoa. And the guy finally said, yes, Reed, if you can do these things, then we'll become a client of yours. Only if, though. But I said, Reed, how long did that 40 seconds seem? He goes, man, it seemed like 2 hours. And he says, but I know it seemed like 10 hours for that other guy. Because I just sat back calmly, and we just looked at each other for 40 seconds. So you got to shut up and let them cogitate and make sure they can live with this. Because, Jeff, if I start explaining myself at this point, what happens? If it gets quiet for 10 seconds, I start explaining, well, here's what happens?
Well, inevitably, what I've heard on the tapes is guys start backtracking.
Yep.
Either they put the words in their mouth and they'll say something like, so, yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to work with me if, we find these things wrong, right?
Right.
Or they start saying, so again, well, I don't know if this is going to happen, and you don't necessarily have to make any decisions now, but, just be thinking that, so nothing good happens when you start backtracking or...
Yeah, because what happens to the close then? Is it a close any longer?
No.
It's a more, hey, I'm going to show you this stuff and we'll see what happens. which is worth what? Diddly-do. Okay? So I'm going to play a tape of a gentleman who did this guy made a ton of money on the system. So he's easily was making about $700,000 on the system. But I'm going to play the tape for you, and here's some things to learn. This guy, even though he's making great money, still would make mistakes. But if you get most of it right, here's the great thing about this system. And Jeff, after I like your input on this, the great thing about the system is you don't have to do it perfect. Even if you do it as near to perfect as you can, and that's different, near to perfect as you can is different for one person and another person, it still works. You do not have to be perfect for this system to work. And would you agree or disagree with that, Jeff?
Oh, I would wholeheartedly agree. You have to have the pieces, but you don't have to do it perfectly, and you have a lot of success.
And this guy had huge amounts of success, but he still sent in tapes, and we constantly critiqued so he could have more success. And guess what? It cost him nothing to do that. Guys, if you're not sending in tapes, I could charge, easily thousands of dollars for doing tape reviews for people, because that's how much money you'll make when you send in tape reviews. So you need to start sending in your tapes if you want this kind of the success that this guy had. So what I want you to do is I'm going to play the tape, or Missy's actually going to play the tape, and then watch your screen, because I'm going to be pointing out things as we go through the tape. So instead of interrupting it constantly with turning it off, then me making a comment, then turning it back on, and then turning it off, me making a comment, I'm going to make the comments as the tape is going on the screen. That way you get the flow for how the whole 10 minutes should go, and you'll get the critique as we go, and then we'll critique the whole thing at the end. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody not get what we're doing here? So I'm going to make the critique on the screen as you're listening to the tape. Does that make sense to everybody? So if we don't get anybody saying no, then I'm going to assume that we do.
Yep, we got
okay?
A lot of yeps.
Excellent. So we're going to go through the loyalty versus unconditional love. Then we're going to go, he's going to go right through into the fair versus unfair. Then we're going to get into the little secret close. Okay? So Missy, we are set to go when you are.
Perfect. We had one question that came in
super.
before you got done going through the other part, so it's probably already been clarified, but it's probably a question that other people had too.
Yeah.
So I thought the end of the first meeting was really to determine if they want to work with us. The second meeting gets them to decide to move the money, and that's the close.
Well, I think you answered your own question. When they decide whether they want to work with us or not, that's the close. Because should we go to the next meeting? Should we go to a next meeting if they decide they don't want to work with us? No. Should we go to a next meeting, Jeff, if looking at their stuff, everything is great?
No.
No, because if everything is great, if their current guy has updated their powers of attorney, has their living will in place, the advanced directive in place, has an umbrella policy in place, has no or low fee investments. If everything is good, then should we go to a next meeting? No.
No, absolutely not.
Luckily, how often does that happen in the last 10 years?
Never.
Never. But if it did happen, you should not move forward. So here's why the end of the first meeting is the close. Do I know that I'm going to be able to show them at least 18 different things that their guy has not told them that puts them in a worse position and them in a better, and the advisor in a better position? Do I know that? Yeah. So if they've told me then they don't unconditionally love their guy and they're not going to take my information back to their guy, they're going to do it with me, and I know that I'm going to be able to show them those things, then it's the what? Close. But if I instead let them go through the first meeting and say, all we're going to do is a second opinion, and you still nail the second meeting, will they still get the deal, Jeff?
No.
Sure. Well, no.
If they really tell you they don't like that guy, yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't. You could skip the whole first meeting if you wanted to, and if you got the guy to admit that they hate their guy, you're still going to get the deal. But how much more difficult is it when they come to that second meeting and they think all they're going to get is a second opinion, versus when they come to that second meeting and they know they're coming in to make a decision on whether their guy is doing the right thing or not? See,
yeah,
I've just shaved up. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
It's a lot more difficult.
It is, because they come in with a whole different mindset than if at the end of and plus, here's the big problem with not doing the first meeting right. Jeff, what do you do when somebody says, "Oh, I've had a fantastic event we had 37 buying units. I got 20 appointments, and of those 20 appointments, I had first meetings with 15 of them, and all 15 moved forward to the second meeting. This is awesome. So 15 first meetings and 15 people went to the second meeting. This is awesome. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking they're not doing the first meeting, or they're not doing the end of the first meeting. They're just offering people a free analysis, a second opinion.
Yep. So what they've done is now they're doing twice as much work, because half of those people should not be doing analysis for, because half those people are not going to move forward. And none of them are going into that second meeting thinking, I'm going to make a decision whether my guy's doing a good job or not. If he's not, I'm going to move to Mike. So at this point, first of all, you're going to be doing twice as much work, and you're going to close 20% of what you could close. Where if instead you kicked out the 7, moved 8 people forward, you'd close 7 out of the 8. But I guarantee you, if you moved all 15 people forward, because it's a huge leap, if you skip this part and go to the second meeting, it's a huge leap for them to understand, and they're going to fight you tooth and nail to say that their guy's has motives for doing things wrong. You're going to, instead of closing 7 out of 8 people, you're going to end up closing 2 out of 15 people. That's crazy. So it's not a disaster if you don't do the first meeting right, but it's as near to a disaster as you can get, because you've doubled your work and you've lessened your income by 80%. Okay? So we'll go ahead and, first of all, did that clarify? Whoever asked that question, did that clarify? Hopefully. Well, we'll go ahead anyways. Hopefully it clarified for him. So we're going to start with the loyalty versus unconditional love section of this gentleman's meeting.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Because you've been working. You started to work with Charles how long ago?
Well, really working with in '04, right after John.
Okay.
We had been in association with him at different meetings like yours.
Okay.
I would come to Plymouth every meeting, touch base and see how we would do. A couple of the meetings that we had set up for both of us.
Yeah.
And but he did put me at ease, and my husband was a skeptic, not that way, but I'm out there trusting everybody.
Right.
You know, not that I don't trust him to
Yeah.
but I got to feel comfortable with it.
You're going to be absolutely sure that what you've done so far, because, I mean, you're going to work with them for a couple of years or so, something like that, sound right? And, I mean, if he's been doing I have allergies. If he's been doing a good job for you, what should you do? You should stay with him,
And I
right?
wanted to see, like, this is the first full year of anything.
Yep.
And I wanted to see how it looked on paper.
Yep.
But that's something.
Yep, and kind of get it all
Track it,
together.
where,
And,
where
yep.
it came from where and so forth.
Exactly.
And, because I can't remember. I miss. It's just like a house full.
Oh, yeah.
Who's sitting there reading it? You know?
4,000 pages and everything else. I understand that.
You know.
Because, I mean, we have, as far as he's concerned, I mean, if he's been doing a good job, right? I mean, you're happy with it. If he's doing his job and doing a good job for you, what should you do? Absolutely, right? I mean, isn't that what we all do? I mean, if somebody's working, you hire somebody and they're doing a good job, you should do that. I mean, we all kind of expect that, right? I mean, if we had friends, I mean, we're loyal to our friends, right? And they're loyal to us. I mean, if we just kind of changed friends willy-nilly, right? I mean, what kind of person would that be? I mean, none of us would even want to be associated with probably somebody like that. So, I mean, that's when we appreciate people that are loyal. Right? When it comes to our friends, and we'll be loyal to them, they'll be loyal to us. I mean, as long as, you might have friends kind of like I do. I mean, I sent my son on vacation with them, right? I mean, you trust them. They're good people. So you probably have friends like I do, too. I mean, they're super people. They're good, but they're not the type of people that I would trust with my checkbook.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. They're not the best with money, that kind of thing, right?
And it's a personal thing. You don't want to do.
Right.
And I don't think it's the time to sit down with the children and discuss, about Charles and so forth. Michael is on
Yeah, sorry, his name on it.
He's the most responsible one.
Okay.
So that's how I didn't feel that was why.
You weren't comfortable.
No, and do it, but she's late. And the first son, he did come back, but the other three had And so he's in the financial game.
Right.
Found that out inside of that.
Yeah.
So I think could have had all of it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know. It's our
Well, never mind your customer, no, your mother-in-law.
And we're fairly close, but it's just, that's her way of doing business.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, because that's the way it is. I mean, like we're talking about, right, with loyalty, we want to be loyal to people who are loyal back to us. Because if we found, like with our friends, if we found out one of our friends did something that hurt us, what will we do with that friend?
Pull away.
Absolutely, right? I mean, that only makes sense. I mean, we're not going to keep, because they broke that chain of loyalty, right? Same thing, like with our doctors. We build a loyalty up with our doctors, right? We go to them, and, we're going to keep going to them as long as they're doing their job, right? They're keeping us healthy. They're letting us know if something's wrong, right? And in order for them to do that, though, we expect them to do what? Stay educated, right? Stay on top of any new treatments, staying on top of whatever's going on out there, so they can keep us as well as they can, right? But I mean, if we found out that our physician, if you found out your physician was, he missed something, a year ago, he didn't see, or he found it and didn't tell you about it, and if he had, a year later, he could have saved you from, losing an arm or something, right? I mean, what would we do or think about that? I mean, exactly, right?
I shouldn't be.
Either one. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. Either one, right? I mean, we wouldn't do that. We'd quickly be finding someone else, right? And, I mean, that's the way it is with loyalty. But there is one relationship in our lives. There's one relationship that no matter what happens, that we're always going to be loyal to them, even if they're not loyal to us. Do you know what relationship that is? With our with God or our children, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the way it is. Like you even just mentioned. I mean, no matter what our kids do, right? I mean, no matter what happens in our lives, we're going to love them, right? You know what the term that we use for that? It's called unconditional love, right? I mean, and isn't that really it? No matter what we do, no matter pretty much what happens.
They can do no wrong.
Yeah. Even when they do wrong, they didn't do it right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even like I've heard of so many stories where you tell a kid, a daughter or something like that, hey, don't marry that bum, because he's going to do nothing but hurt you. And a year later, she's on the doorstep, knocking on the door, saying, "You were right." But of course, we just going to slam the door and say, "Hey, we told you so." I mean, is that what we would do? No, of course not, right?
I have a granddaughter who's graduating June, packing up, can't wait to get out of the house. She's going, and none of us, we all have that same feeling. There's some here, he's not gainfully employed.
Okay.
Put up a good appearance, follows around like a puppy. I know there's something.
Well,
what more
the thing about being young, though, is hopefully, she's got time on her side at least. So hopefully, recover. Hopefully the bad won't happen, but.
Yeah, I'd love for all of us to be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I mean, and that's still, but with our children, that's the only relationship that we have like that. Because, but like with Charles, with our brokers or people that you work with, you're going to stay loyal to him as long as he's like the physician, right? As long as he's doing his job, right? As long as he's staying educated, he's keeping you abreast as to what's going on. He's doing all those things, right? And as long as he is doing that, what are you going to do? Absolutely, right? That only makes sense.
In fact, I just recommended to my client, recently early retired, and old like I am, but that she called me from his office, or they called me from his house.
Let's say you found out, though, let's say, because as long as you're doing a good job, we know you're going to stay, right? It only makes sense. You're going to do that, and you should do that. But if you found out that maybe he, isn't staying on top of everything, or maybe he isn't keeping informed of all of those things, or, hasn't really been doing his job.
Right.
If you found out that he's, all these things that are going on,
we would go elsewhere.
Because, even though, up to this point, anyway, you think, he's been doing a good job, he's doing all those things, as far as you know, right? That's, as long as that's the case, you're going to stay there. But if you find out that maybe that's not the case, that maybe he hasn't kept you informed about some of these things, or maybe he hasn't told you everything, given you all the information that maybe you should have gotten, if you find out that, right? Do you have unconditional love for your broker? Because if you found out that, just like you said, what would you do? Right?
Afraid I don't want to work so hard for it. He didn't get to enjoy. He didn't get to enjoy life.
Yep.
So it was like.
Absolutely.
And my kids are all I have. I have no,
Okay.
my mother's father. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm not that close to his family, simply because they're up in Watertown.
Yeah,
We don't get,
Yep.
we don't get together.
Yep.
And the older you get, the less you drive.
But, exactly. Yeah.
All you do is make a funeral.
But I mean, and that's, I mean, and I mentioned earlier in the appointment, I said about half the people that come in, about half of them end up becoming long-term clients of ours. And I said the other half, you know, I mean, there are people that we can't help. I mean, unfortunately, it's just, you know, we're just not able to do anything for them. But we've been doing this for over 18 years. Bill and I both both have been in this over 18 years. And we know when we can help people, and we know when we can't. I mean, this is my son, Sean.
I thought it might
He'll be 21 next month, and this is my wife, Beth. We've been married over 23 years. And I grew up, like I mentioned, I grew up in a big family. One of the big things in my family was at night, at dinner time, we all had dinner together. No matter where you were, what you were doing, you had to be home by 5:30, have dinner. And I kind of carried that into my family. I mean, none of my friends did that or like that, but no matter what, I scheduled my time. I was always home at a certain time. We had dinner together every night. I mean, up until my son's, you know, thank God he's on his own. He's got his own place. He's working. He's a good kid. He's a real good man. But, I mean, when I'm not here, I spend time with my family. That's what's important to me, anyway. So I don't need any more practice. You know, we don't ask anyone to go on to a second appointment or to move forward in our process at all unless we're absolutely confident that we can actually put you in a better position, not just help you substantially enough to do something. So, I mean, like I said, I mean, you know, we know when we can and when we can't help people. And to tell you a little secret, I mean, I know going forward, I mean, because we get along so well here, and that's really important to me, because we make big commitments to our clients. We do a lot of, I just know going forward, you're probably going to become a client of ours. But what I'd like to do at this point, just going to have another appointment coming in at noon now, and I just did a scan here, but what I'd like to do is just schedule.
Guys, he went through all of that, and then what happened? He said what? You'll probably become a client of mine. Why did he do that? Jeff, why did he do that? Are you there, Jeff? So,
Yeah.
probably.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he was scared.
That's right.
Yeah, he was scared she wouldn't agree.
Yes, so he was concerned with what he was supposed to be doing right now, which is to get the confirmation that she's either going to weasel out or give him the commitment, or he's worried about the sale.
Well, he was worried that she was going to weasel out, or.
Well, he was more worried about that she may say no.
Right.
And then what would happen to that case? It would go away. So he was concerned about where he was supposed to be at the third meeting, not where he's supposed to be right now, which is to say what? Can you visualize leaving your guy? Because I'm telling you, based on what you just told me, you're going to leave your guy. Now remember too, what did he skip there, guys? Did everybody see my following on the screen there? What did he forget before he even got to the little secret close? And Missy, tell me if you get some answers there. So
Fair versus unfair?
Yeah, so he did a pretty good job on loyalty versus unconditional love. I mean, not as good as I'd like to see, but you don't, again, as Jeff and I were just talking about, it doesn't have to be 100%. If it's 70%, that's fine. And he did this about 70% of what he should have done at the loyalty versus unconditional love. But then he completely didn't do any of the fair versus unfair. And then when he got to this point, he said probably become a client. And guess why he weaseled out here? Guess why he chickened out? Because of this. Guys, if let's say that I met a gal, and I've been dating her for 3 months, and we've never talked about marriage, we never talked about having kids, we've never talked about anything, never even living together, and then I decide I'm going to ask her to marry me. So I go to a store and I buy a big ring. Should I be nervous when I'm going to ask her to marry me? So let's see some answers to that. Should I be nervous if I'm going to ask her to marry me on my date tonight? Should I be nervous?
Yeah. A whole
Yes,
lot
why?
of yeses. Run.
Yeah, because we haven't talked about marriage, we haven't talked about having kids, we haven't talked about, that's crazy. So of course when I get there, if the date's not going perfectly, I'm going to chicken out. Why? Because I don't know what her answer will be. I have no clue what her answer will be. Now, let's say instead I've dated a gal. We've talked about being married. We've talked about where we would live. We talked about whose house we would live in. We've talked about how many kids we would have. We've actually gone to jewelry stores and looked at rings, so I know what kind of ring she wants. Now I'm going to ask her to marry me tonight. I mean, I'm still going to be nervous, but am I going to be nervous just because it's a big question, or am I going to be nervous because she might say no? I already know what the answer is. I mean, I would faint or say, what the hell has been going on for the last 6 months with all this talk about marriage, and you tell me no. I mean, I would be angry, wouldn't I, if she said no, because I know what the answer would be, which is yes. And guys, that's when you do the loyalty versus unconditional love, and you do the fair versus unfair, that's like talking about being married. We've been talking about being married for 10 minutes now. And then when we finally say, will you marry me, 50% of the people will say no. And should we be afraid of that? Jeff, should we be afraid of people saying no?
No, we shouldn't be afraid of that.
No, we should welcome it, because then it means what? We've identified them before we've done a stitch of work for them. And guys, it was 50-50 for me, and for the last 10 years, it's been 50-50 for every guy we've coached. Half the people will say yes, and half the people will say no. It's just, I don't know why, but that's the numbers, and it's that way in California, in New York, Florida, Texas, Minnesota, you name it. The numbers are 50-50. And Jeff, you talk to these guys all the time. I mean, it's almost odd how it's almost always 50-50, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost always half and half.
Yeah. So we're not worried about them saying no. We want that 50% to say no. It saves us time and effort. It means we're going to put all of our effort into the 50% who've got a 90% chance of closing with all their money. But if I don't set it up right, if I don't do the loyalty versus unconditional love and I don't do the fair versus unfair, I may chicken out because I don't know what her answer is going to be. And I may chicken out because I don't want to lose this possible client. But I'm telling you, you will not lose any clients by asking this question. You'll lose people who are going to suck you dry for all your information and take your information back to their guy. But you're not going to lose any clients. In fact, you'll gain a ton of clients because they're going to leave here visualizing in their head, that 50% that are going to say, well, if you could do what you say you could do, those people have now visualized leaving their guy. We have made the close because now all we have to do is have them discover for themselves that they want to leave their guy. You can't, you know, here's the thing. He got all the way to the Holy Grail, and then what did he do? He spent all this time and effort going to get to the Holy Grail. He got up to the Holy Grail. He's just about to grab it, and then what did he do? Forget it. Don't want it. Walked away. Don't do that, guys. So we talked about why he didn't chicken out. Why can you not chicken out? Because you want that 50-50, because that means the 50% that will say no or will waffle on you or weasel on you, you don't do any work for them. You put them on the drip, and you'll get them sometime when they're ready to work with you. But the 50% of them that say yes, you're going to get 90% of them to move 100% of their money. That's the ticket, guys. That's how you make all the money. It's not the marketing. It's not the seminar. It's not anything that we do with marketing. It's the selling system where at the first meeting, we get 50% of them to opt out. We get the 50% that are going to opt in at the end of the second meeting to move all their money to us. And again, you're not going to get all of them. You get 90%. And invariably, you're going to lose one or two per event that'll still weasel on you. They basically lied to your face, or they just couldn't pull the trigger at the end. But you're going to get 80 to 90% of the people to move all of their money to you. So, do you see why it's necessary to do the loyalty versus unconditional love and the fair versus unfair so you don't chicken out at the end? And also, do you see, I want to go back here, when he said probably, you probably become a client of mine. Can you say probably, guys? If you say probably, again, he was afraid she was going to say what? No. No, this is about black and white. You want them to visualize leaving their client, either yes or no. If it's no, you kick them out nicely and put them on the drip program. If it's, well, you know, if you can do these things, Mike, I say, yeah, only if. Then you've got these people visualizing leaving their, no probably about it. It's either yes or no in their minds. If he does it, yes. If he doesn't do it, no. If my guy's doing a good job, no, I'm not going to leave him. If my guy's not doing a good job, yes, I am leaving him because I don't unconditionally love him, and it would be unfair to ourselves to stay with him. This is extremely important. Can you close at the end of a second meeting without doing this right? Yeah, but it's a lot harder because they're going to fight you tooth and nail through that whole. You better be an expert at getting on people's side because they're going to fight you tooth and nail at that second meeting if you don't do it right at the first meeting. And Jeff, you constantly get people who ask you, Jeff, I really didn't do this right at the first meeting, and I really didn't get their commitment at that first meeting. How can I correct it at the second meeting?
Yeah, you can't. And the most common thing that I hear is, well, I really didn't do that at the end, so how about if I do that? How about if I start the second meeting with that conversation? And you can't do that because you just told them at the end of the first meeting that, hey, we're going to go forward and look at your information, no strings attached. And if the first thing you do is sit across from them at that next meeting and say, I know I told you no strings, but actually there are some strings, they're going to be pissed off. So there's no going back. If you don't do it right, all you can learn from that is the second meeting's going to be tough, and if I don't want it to be tough, I'll do it right next time.
Yep. And as Jeff was right when he said, if you did, earlier on when he said, if you don't do this right, you're screwed at the second meeting. And I said, well, not really, because if you do the second meeting right and they hate their guy, you can still close them. But so I said that I disagree with Jeff, but you know what? In the 10 years I've been teaching this, I haven't seen anybody who's good enough at the second meeting that if they haven't done the first meeting right to get them to hate their guy. It's too hard. It's way too hard to do that. I mean, if you could do it, yes. I just have yet to see somebody who's done it perfect. So here's the thing. Do this right, and then the second meeting you don't have to be perfect. The second meeting you could be 70%. You could be 50% at the second meeting and still close them if you do the first meeting right. And by first meeting right, that means setting the tone at the beginning of the meeting and doing the fair versus unfair, the unconditional love, and the little secret close at the end of the first meeting. That's doing it right. Okay? So any questions or comments on what we covered today?
I do have a few questions that have come
Super.
in. So where do you have this conversation? Before you move to setting the appointment with your assistant or as you're walking the potential client to her desk? And what if the next appointment is already in the waiting room?
Well, that's great. I want the next appointment to be in the waiting room. That's fantastic. Why? It sets a precedent that, oh, people are making appointments. People are moving forward. This guy's working. People are working with him. It's consensus. It's a huge principle of influence. That's fantastic if there's another client in the other room. So when do you do this? It's at the end of the meeting. So at the end of the 60 minutes, the last 10 minutes is spent having this conversation. And so when they say, yeah, Mike, only if, I say, yep, only if. I mean, if your guy's doing a great job, you're going to stick with him. But if he's not doing a great job, not little things but big things, you're going to do what? Well, then we move to you, Mike. Super. Well, then let's do this. Let's go to the front desk, and we'll make an appointment for a week out because it takes me about a week to go through your situation. And then I'll set you up with Missy. She'll make copies of all your documents, and then before you leave here, and then we'll have all those, and then you can you'll just come back in a week from now, and then we'll take a look at your situation, and we'll go from there. How does that sound? It's as simple as that. If they don't have all their stuff, then I'll say, well, we'll go out to the front desk, and what we can do is one or two things. We'll make an appointment for you to meet with Missy. I won't be able to meet with you again, but Missy, you can make an appointment with Missy and come in, and she can make copies of all your statements and all of the powers of attorney things that we need, or we can give you a FedEx envelope, and then you can send those things to us FedEx, and then we will give you them back the next time you come, whichever is better for you. But I do need a week to work on your situation, so I will need these items a full 7 days prior to our next appointment. So, guys, does it really take me well, Jeff, you help guys with case analysis all the time. Does it really take a week to do these things?
No, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how much stuff they have at the most. That does bring up a good point, though. You know, one of the things that I find is it takes 10 or 15 minutes to have this last part of these last conversations with this client to get them to say, no, if he's not doing his job, I'll work with you. It takes 10 or 15 minutes to do loyalty versus unconditional love, fair versus unfair, and little secret close. So Sometimes guys weenie out because they have 5 minutes to do that whole thing. They've spent too much time gathering data, gathering facts, talking about investments, that they look up at the clock and they've got 5 minutes before their next appointment and they haven't even started this. So give yourself time to do this. Remember, I can get the information, the data, the investment stuff later. I can get that over the phone. I can get that between meetings. I can't have this conversation over the phone, and I can't have this conversation at the next meeting. So if you're running behind, if you look up at your clock and you think you're running behind, then stop doing the data gathering and start doing this. This is way more important than gathering data.
Amen. Guys, this will get you a case. Finding out more about their mutual funds will not get you a case at the first meeting because they haven't hired you yet. So, and Jeff's right. There's 2 reasons that people go long, and you're right. And you kind of heard this with this gentleman. What he did is he says, I got another appointment, so he scooted through it for all sorts of reasons, including that he was running out of time. The 2 reasons people run out of time is either they spend way too much time gathering data. Guys, those of you who've been with me for a while, how long does it take me to gather data? How long does it actually take me? Now, it's not how long I go, but in reality, at how long before I've gathered enough data that I don't need to gather any more data? How long does it take me to gather data when I'm in front of a client? Let's see some answers.
I've got 1 minute.
1 minute is right. Whoever said 1 minute, who said that, Missy?
Mickey.
Mickey, you are absolutely right. Great job. 1 minute is all it takes. Because if they've got mutual funds, variable annuities, managed money, bonds, if they've got things that I recognize immediately I can help them with, I don't need any more information because I'm not going to do any analysis there. I do the analysis between the first meeting and the second meeting. And as Jeff said, if I don't gather enough data, I can always call them in between. And do they look at that as a bad thing or as a good thing if I call them up in between and say, Jeff, I was just working on your situation here, and I had just a couple more questions as I'm putting your situation together. You think that's viewed badly? That makes you look even better. They never had their guy do that. So now, do I take a minute? No, I'll actually take about 5 or 6 minutes in theater to make it look like I'm looking for more than what I'm looking for. But as soon as I see certain things, mutual funds, variable annuities, managed money, bonds, I know I've got a client. I don't need to gather any more information. So that's the first thing that people waste time on. They'll spend 40 minutes talking about investments. That's bad because that says the only thing that you're worried about is what? Their money. And guess what? They already got a guy who's only concerned about them is their money. Do they need another guy who's only concerned is about their money? No. You need to come across as a consultant. The second reason people run late is they do the rapport the old-fashioned way, the used car salesperson way. They get into these 15-minute conversations about fishing or football or children or whatever it may be. Guys, when you do that, do you sound professional or do you look like a used car salesman? You look like a used car salesman. We use getting on their side as rapport building, not the old-fashioned used car salesman way. These people see you immediately as a salesperson when you start talking about all these personal items. However, when you get on their side about things that they're concerned with emotionally, that's what creates deep rapport. Not false rapport, but deep rapport. That does not take 15 minutes. You're doing that continually. And I pointed out a couple times when this gentleman was doing it through this conversation with what the lady was saying. He got on her side about it twice in the last 10 minutes. He was creating deep rapport. That was a good thing that he was doing. So you don't, like as Jeff said, don't end up in the hole. We have a clock. We've shown you that clock, what's supposed to be happening that first 60 minutes. And I would tell you that, Jeff, and you can agree, you listen to these tapes and listen to these guys as well. These guys had made $1 million a year. If I walked in at 40 minutes, would I know what any one of those guys were saying?
Oh, absolutely.
How about at 55 minutes?
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, it's like a machine. And you know what? When a machine does the same thing, what? Over and over and over. Does it do it differently? Does a machine kick out different results every time a machine kicks something out?
No.
No, the value of a machine is what? Everything that comes out is what?
The same.
The same. When you start winging things at these meetings, then guess what we know about your output? I have no clue. If you want to be a quote-unquote artist at these meetings and have everyone a little bit different, then guess what? Your results are going to be different than all the guys that Jeff and I have worked with. But if you want the results of the guys that Jeff and I have worked with, the guys making $500,000 to $1 million a year, then turn into a machine like they are and know where you're supposed to be at 10 minutes in, where you're supposed to be at 20 minutes in, where you're supposed to, and we have a clock right there. We've shown you over and over and over the clock of where you're supposed to be in that first meeting. So, Missy, what was another question?
Got a couple more. Fair versus unfair is a lot harder to manage in a meeting because it's more difficult to get the responses versus deer-in-the-headlight response. So it's a place where we chicken out, and it seems more difficult to get the appropriate responses.
I will tell you this. Send me a tape where you've had trouble doing that, and within a half hour to an hour, guess how good you're going to be at doing that? Of working with Jeff or working with me. Within an hour, guess how good you're going to be at that? Anybody want to take a guess on how good, Mickey, you've mentored with me, how good you're going to be with that if I spend an hour with you teaching you that, one-on-one, on the phone? If Mickey's still on with us. He's not.
Waiting for any response here.
Well, I'll just tell you, guys. Jeff, can I ask you, in the last 6 months, how many guys have called you up and said, Jeff, I'd like to set up a half-hour, an hour appointment with you because I'm having difficulty with the fair versus unfair?
None.
Isn't that interesting? I haven't had any of those calls either. And, Jeff, you've seen me mentor guys for 10 years now. Could I fix somebody in 1 hour if they called me and I mentored with them on the fair versus unfair? That's the only thing that worked out.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, everybody's going to have a different sticking point, but send in a tape and whatever it is, we can get it fixed.
Well, once it's fixed, Jeff, when do they have that sticking point again?
No, it's fixed forever. Once it's fixed, it's fixed.
So thank you. Whoever made that comment, thank you for making that comment. Does it make any sense, guys, to suffer by yourself in your office knowing that every time you meet with folks, you're having the same difficulty at the same place in the meeting? Does that make any sense whatsoever? When you've come on board and Jeff and I have said, listen, we're open books. Call us whenever you want. Set up appointments, set up tapes. We'll work with you one-on-one. How many other places in the industry do you have people who are willing to do that? If you're having a sticking point, you're not the first person that's had a sticking point. We've been working with people with sticking points for these guys. The dozen guys that I helped make $1 million a year were making no more than $200,000 a year when they came on board with us. Many of them were making less than $150,000. And Jeff, did they all have sticking points?
Yeah, everybody has sticking points.
Guys, they didn't just say, wow, this is easy. They read it in a book, said it, the next time we went to see it. No, they worked with Jeff and I with role-playing, with tape review, with calling up and saying, this keeps happening to me at the meeting. For example, the guy says, this unfair versus fair, I keep screwing it up at the meeting. It keeps going badly. Super, let's sit down and let's get it fixed for you. And what they did is they fixed one thing after another thing after another thing, just like I fixed one thing after another thing after another thing until nothing was left to be fixed. That's when you make $1 million a year. It's not when you can get 100 people into an event. It's when you get 30 people into an event and you close 8 of them for $150,000 a piece. That's when you've made it. Not when you get 100 people in and you close 2 people. It's when you get 30 people in and you close 8 of them for all their money. It's the selling process, not the marketing. And the only way you're going to get the selling process, as Jeff says, some people have told me, fair versus unfair, that's so easy. I can't do that loyalty versus unconditional love. Everybody's sticking point is different. Call us up when you have a sticking point, and we'll fix it very, very rapidly for you, and then you never have to work on that part of the meeting again. It's perfect. That's great. You'll never have to work on that part of the meeting again. So, Missy, other questions?
If they don't have an advisor and aren't do-it-yourselfers, do you still need to do all this at the end?
I'm confused. How can you not have an advisor and not be a do-it-yourselfer? So you mean, do they just like inherited money maybe? Is that what you're saying? Where they don't have an advisor, they've never had money in their life, so they weren't a do-it-yourselfer, but then all of a sudden they inherited money and just, or if they were a small business person who'd never dealt with, never really had I mean, is that kind of what we're talking about? Help me out here, because I don't know how you could be a...
He just clarified, just have some insurance contracts. So maybe they no longer have an advisor. They did at one point. They no longer have an advisor.
I'm still going to do it. Why? Why would I still do it?
I would say, yeah, I know what you're saying. I get this question every once in a while, too. Well, they bought a variable annuity. They've got a couple variable annuities. They bought them a few years ago. They haven't talked to the guy since. Do I still need to do that? Yeah, you still need to do it.
Well, remember what happened with Jim? Jim told us what happened to him. One of our guys told us this happened to him. He kind of felt bad about a client because they'd had an argument the last time that they talked. He hadn't talked to them like for 7 years. Then this client went to an event, saw some great stuff, and guess what the client did? After not talking to Jim for 7 years.
Brought it back to him.
Yeah, called up Jim and said, I went to this event, and this is what they're recommending. What do you think I should do? Jim said, well, I can do that. So guess what they did? After not talking to Jim for 7 years, Jim thought they were a dead client. Guess what they did? They worked with Jim on that product. So that guy paid for their meal, went to all the time spent with them, presented all this stuff to them, and they ended up going back to the guy they hadn't talked to for 7 years. Guess how often I want that to happen to me? And guys, here's the thing. Will it be a more difficult or an easier conversation if they have a loose relationship instead of a tight relationship? Jeff, should that be a harder conversation or an easier?
It's going to be a lot easier.
So why not do it? If I'm willing to do the hard ones, why wouldn't I be willing to do the easy ones? And guys, I never want to be fooled. When I started to make $1 million a year, I controlled the whole situation. I was never blindsided. And I will tell you, and Jeff, I know that we've talked about this, when these guys have told us that they don't have relationships, and then by the end of the third meeting, what ends up happening, they call us up and say, we didn't get the deal. Why?
Well, they ended up working with their current guy, yeah.
Yeah, this guy that they had no relationship with, that they haven't talked to for years, and all of a sudden, magically, they go back to that guy. It's an easier to do if they don't have a tight relationship, so do it. Guys, if with a machine, I start tweaking the machine. Every time it's doing output, I start tweaking it differently. What happens to the output? It's different every time. A machine is designed to do the same thing over and over and over. And Jeff, how many times do you hear, well, these people were different?
Too often. Should never hear that.
These people don't fit the 5Q model.
Yeah, there's no such thing.
Everybody fits the 5Q model. Treat everybody the same and you'll have the same results. Treat everybody differently and I don't know what kind of results you're going to have. Probably the same results you've been having for the last 5 years. So other questions, Missy?
Last question is, how do you kick someone out nicely?
So if they've said, well, we'll see, I'm not making any promises, I'll circle back and say, oh, I'll get it. First of all, if they say something I don't like, the first thing I do is what, guys? Get on their side. So when they say, well, we'll see, we're not making, I say, yeah, absolutely. I mean, how can you make promises at this point? You haven't seen anything. So I'm going to get on their side for 5 minutes. Then I'm going to circle back and simply ask them the same question all over again, which is that, hey, so if your guy's doing everything he should be doing, what should you do? We should stay with him. Exactly, you should stay with him. But if we find that there's not little changes, but big changes, if I say, hey, I could save you $25 in taxes a year, that'd be crazy to make any changes for that, wouldn't it? But what if it was $2,500 a year? What if it was this, that, and the other thing? Then what would you do? Would you take all my information back to him? Or would you do it with me? Well, no, we wouldn't take it all back. We would do it with you. And why? Who would it be unfair to? I just go through the whole thing all over again. And if they still weasel out, I just say, you know what, here's the thing. Do you think that, when it comes to medical treatment, do you think communication is important or not important? Well, it's important. Yeah, because if I'm not communicating with my doctor, he might take off my left leg when it's my right leg that's hurting, right? Yeah, so it's the same thing with finances. Here's what the fact is, if I told you, Jeff, that there was a surgeon that was a world-famous surgeon, but you didn't communicate with him at all. He spoke a different language. He had no time for you. He didn't want you to ask any questions. He just lived on his laurels. He said, you just do what I do. I'm the best doctor. Or you could work with the surgeon that was the best in the city, who was excellent at communicating. He took the time to answer all your questions. Made sure you understood it backwards and forwards. Talk to your wife and your family. Make sure everything. Which one would you work with?
I'd work with the one that I could talk to.
I mean, and everybody I've asked that to in the last 10 years have all said the same thing. They work with the guy they could talk to. If he's competent and they communicate, that's far better than working with the best guy they don't communicate with. And here's the thing, Mr. Client. When we're talking, it seems like when I'm talking, I use my hands for this, guys, and I'll have my two hands coming towards each other. Say, when I'm talking, it seems like, and then I'll have them coming towards each other, and then I'll have a miss. It seems like we miss. And when you're talking, it seems like, and I do the same thing with my hands again, and we miss. And the most important thing that comes to finances is having the best communication possible. I think even though, as you said earlier, everybody in town that's worried about income planning all work with me, that doesn't mean you should. You should work with somebody, even if they maybe aren't as much of an expert, just that you communicate better with. So until we can determine whether you can communicate better with me, I think you need to find other people to communicate with. If you want, we can go through the yellow pages here, and I can give you some input on who would be good for you. And guess what they say at that point? No, I've got to figure it out. Just and then they're off. So basically, I use the we aren't communicating well, and you shouldn't work with anybody on your finances or your health when you're not communicating well with them. And then some people at that point say, whoa, what do you mean not communicating well? Now, and I'll go through. I say, listen, you just said you don't unconditional. I'll get straight to the point at that point. This is the third time round. 3 strikes and you're out. I'll get right to the point and say, listen, you told me you don't unconditionally love your guy. You told me it'd be unfair to take my stuff back to your guy. And all I'm asking you is, if we find major things, are you going to work with me or are you not going to work with me? And if they still say weasel out, then I'm saying, see, that's where I'm saying we're not communicating well. So I appreciate you coming in. Doors always open. Love to have you come back, but until you think we can communicate better, I think you're better off served with somebody else who you communicate better with. That's it. Any other questions, Missy?
Nope, that's everything.
So, guys, do you like these types of tape reviews where we actually listen to guys in the field and can critique it? I mean, is this a good thing? Am I getting any answers there, Missy?
I've got a yes, a good.
So 1 yes and 1 good. So we'll do it for them next time.
Oh, and a whole ton of yeses, and very helpful.
Good.
There we go.
Okay.
Just delayed.
Okay. So, and guys, if it works well for us to listen to somebody else's tape, just think how well it would work for you. And let's say you don't have a tape. Jeff, would you be willing to spend a half an hour role-playing this stuff with people?
Sure I would.
So would I. Even if you don't have a tape, call us up and say, we're having a trouble with this part of the meeting. Can you role-play it with me? And what we do is we have you say it, we critique you. Have you say it, we'll critique you. Have you say it. We don't do the whole meeting. We take it a tiny part. Like we're just going to, that unfair versus fair was an excellent example. We won't take the whole meeting. We'll just work on that one part till you're excellent at that part. We never have to work on it again. And we'll just build one block on top of another block on top of another block. So I'm glad you guys are seeing the benefit of these tape reviews. Just think how much more beneficial they'd be if they're yours. If you're too shy, we'll continue to use other guys' experiences to help you out. But guys, it's 10 times better to do it yourself, but you still, as you see, get some benefit out of listening to others as well. So appreciate it very much. Hope you have a good day and rest of the week. And again, if you've got questions, give us a holler. We're here to help. Okay, guys?
Hey,
Anything
Mike,
else? Yes.
I had one kind of late question that came in. In the social setting, if someone begins to ask you questions about their situation, how do you convert this?
If you've done the first setting the tone right, remember we talked about what? The first thing we talk about at the setting the tone is questions. And we say, now, would it be okay, Jeff, to share with you what happens in the next hour or so?
Sure.
I'm going to actually just stop a second. I think Shell's saying in a social setting, so someone that actually hasn't gone through this process yet, if it kind of corners you and begins to ask you these kinds of questions about their situation, how do you move forward with that?
Well, if there's a lot of people around, it's easy because you say, well, Shell, I mean, appreciate the question you're asking me, and I really like to get into. I just have a policy that in public settings I just don't get into these things because it always turns to a little bit more personal than I want to get into in a public setting, and I just take people's privacy very, very, very seriously. If you'd ever want to meet with me one-on-one, we could certainly go through that. So if it's in a crowded room, in a party, whatever, it's easy to do that. If it's not in a crowded room, I'm just simply going to say, well, I just have gotten into a policy where I don't answer a lot of questions until I know people's whole situation from front to back, because it's like medicine to a certain degree. A little bit of bad information can do a lot of harm, and so until I know somebody's situation backwards and forwards, I really don't like to give specific advice on how things work, because how it would work for you, Bob, would be totally different. How it would work for Mary would be totally different than how it would work for Frank. So I'd love to meet with you. I mean, I'll give you full attention, answer all your questions. We just have to keep things pretty general until we get into a situation where we could actually look at your full finances from front to back because I just don't want to do something that's going to get me in trouble. And Shell, I'm going to give you an example of why that is the case, a real-life example of why that's the case. About 15 or 20 years ago, I got a call from an angry attorney saying, "You almost cost my client $20,000. I'm like, whoa, dude, what are you talking about? And he goes, "You almost cost, I mean, I'm angry. I'm sorry for being angry, but I'm angry because you almost cost my client $20,000. I'm like, well, first of all, let's talk, who is this client? So they give me the client name. I'm like, I don't know who that is. I'm sorry, I don't know who that is. Missy, you know who that is? No, so we don't know who that is. So what is this person claiming that I did? Well, here's the thing. I had his trust set up, and we had all of his accounts in trust, and then what happened is he took his trust off of all of his accounts, and he put TOD and POD on them. Well, in my seminar, remember, the Take Your Brain for a Jog is the 5th generation of seminar. The 1st generation of seminar, I was talking about TODs and PODs. And so this person went to the seminar, and we went and looked back and looked, yep, he did go to a seminar, had heard at the seminar that the TODs and PODs were the way to have your account set up to avoid probate, so he went back and changed all of his accounts to TOD or POD, and he took the trust off, which would have cost him and his $20,000 was minimum what it would have cost him if he didn't do that. So I learned early on that guess what? Giving any type of advice without knowing their full current situation is malpractice and can get you into huge amounts of trouble. And you need to communicate that to those people. Does that help, Shell?
Sure does. He says, okay, thanks.
Okay, so anything else, Missy, before I let everybody go?
Nope, that's everything.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Oh, and be on the call tomorrow for the new event, or the new workshop that we have coming out. That was a bad commercial there at the very end. So be on that call tomorrow. Thanks, guys.